example of that to some folks I was speaking to the other day. And I said, you know, a good example to me is Intel in Ireland being a responsible corporate citizen in this country. We have certain responsibilities. And I believe passionately that one of those responsibilities was speaking out on the Lisbon vote. I think every business person in Ireland fundamentally believed last time around that it was critical for Ireland, for our business prosperity, for our future, the future of our kids, to say yes to Lisbon. But many of us didn't speak out and say that. And I believe one of the things that's really important, that we don't become the silent majority and allow fringe elements in this country basically create the agenda. And that's one of the things that I liken to corporate citizenship or responsibility. If you believe something strongly, that I think there's a responsibility on all our behalves to say so, and say it in a way that's impactful and meaningful. On the environment, you know, working to protect the planet by building environmental sustainability into everything we do. You know, at a macro level, it's fairly obvious now that even countries like China realize that if they don't build out their infrastructure in a sustainable way, then the environment that they create and the wealth that they create won't be of much good to the citizens of the country, because it'll be a polluted environment. So if you think about the business proposition for sustainability in any emerging economy, I think they're faced with a huge challenge of building out their ecosystem, building out their sustainable future economy in such a way that it has long-lasting positive effects for each of their citizens. And I think this is something that a lot of large economies and emerging economies are waking up to, that fact that they have to reconcile their short-term progress with their longer-term sustainability. And that's happening right around the world. It's happening in Ireland, it's happening in China, it's happening all around us. Again, there's nothing new about corporate social responsibility. Gordon Moore, who many of you probably heard of before, I had the pleasure to meet Gordon in my early days with Intel, and he was one of the guys that really people like me looked up to, himself, Andy Grove, Craig Barrett, and an unbelievable individual, an unbelievable leader, and an unbelievable technologist. He is one of the top 3 philanthropists in the world now. He's just given away $6.8 billion of his hard-earned money to philanthropic causes. And it's interesting the ones he chose. He chose science, the environment, and nursing. So it's really interesting. He's been heavily involved in projects in the Amazon and sustainability and so on. This is not new. The point I'm making is this is not new to Intel. It's something that we've been doing for a long time. And going back to a report that the Environmental Health and Safety Report that was issued in January 1995, you can read what Gordon said way back then. That's a long time ago. So what I'm saying to you is that there's nothing new about corporate social responsibility in an Intel context. It's something that we built in to our DNA many, many years ago. Just talking about the sustainability agenda, rather than give you a whole laundry list of good things we've done, I try and give you a little bit of a flavor for how we do things. When we talk about environmental issues or anything we do that's important, we try and embed those things that are important to us into everything that we do every day. Because if we don't build them in, if they're afterthoughts, if they're adjuncts, if they're sort of and oh by the way things, they never get done because they don't make the ZBB list. So you have to build them into the projects and the expectations of every employee and everything they do every day. Because if you don't get it into that sort of a system, then it gets crowded out by everything else that's expected of those employees. So simple things like compliance is a minimum, continuous improvement, development, awareness, team development, all those things. We call it do, check, act, and then plan, do, check, and act. And it's a simple process we go through on pretty much everything we do. And the environment is no different to that. And what I think is key about this is that when we talk about the environment or we talk about sustainability, we talk to operating managers, we talk to technicians, to engineers, to group leaders, and to managers, not to some project managers, not to some people that are off the side managing it sort of as a side project. These things are fundamental to the measurement system of what people get rewarded for. And I think the key to any of these improvements you want to make, if you want to make these kind of improvements, you have to build them into the daily life of the management team and right through the organization. So when we talk about sustainability, obviously it's managing our operations responsibly, and I'll show you some charts on that in a few moments. But when I say responsibly, everything that we do, every choice we make, every project that we put in place, every engineering project that we put in place, we look at it through the lens of not just a short-term ROI, but long-term sustainability. And by the way, that makes business sense. I haven't come up against the project yet, and back to Kieran's question that he asked people. There's something fundamentally wrong if you continually find yourself putting off a good project that's a sustainable project, that's an environmentally friendly project, because it's not congruent with the goals and objectives of the company. There's something fundamentally wrong with that, because it says you really got to look at that hard and ask yourself, are you looking at it through the right lens? Because I don't think there's any dissonance between doing things the right way for the long haul and doing things cost effectively with a return both short-term and long-term for the shareholders. Designing products for energy efficiencies in the environment. This is, I think, where Intel really can make a difference across the world. You know, there's lots of things that make small incremental improvements that we can do in our operations, but there are the big things. And the big things, and I spoke about these before, we are designing products today, and everyone knows this from Gordon Moore's law. Basically, for 40 years now, we've been delivering products to the market that are twice as many transistors on the same piece of silicon every 18 to 24 months and half the cost. But those same transistors that we generate can be applied to giving you more, if you like, power in your computer, but they can also be applied to create better energy efficiency. And particularly over the last 5 or 6 years, and maybe a little bit more than that, more and more of those transistors that are on that particular piece of silicon are applied to energy conservation, more so than power performance. And one of the reasons for that, if you just think about a big data center, many data centers around the world today, the cost of electricity is actually higher than the cost of the servers themselves. In fact, the electricity costs will create a situation where it makes sense for us, because we incrementally produce better products every 18 months to 2 years, more energy efficient, we can upgrade those products in those data centers across the world, and the ROI is a very short ROI, because the relationship between those improvements, the cost of the computers, the cost of ownership of those computers, and the actual cost of energy. That's just the macroeconomics of doing that. So it makes fundamental sense. And then if you look at ICT as an enabler of a sustainable environment and an environmentally friendly environment, I think ICT contributes about 10% of the world's energy consumption, but it delivers massive benefits in terms of energy reduction. So there's a disproportionate impact on the environment by the technology that we deploy. Sustainability initiatives, I'll talk about some of those in a moment, and then solving environmental challenges with technology. I mean, there's lots and lots of examples, and Porrick probably will speak about this, as smart metering and all those things that can be applied from a advanced technology to put sensors in and all kinds of very fancy gadgets that simply create a situation where things come on only when they're required and things go off when they're not required. And just the energy efficiency of being able to anticipate requirements of a particular center that's pulling down energy and manage it in a much more efficient way than we've done previously. I think the days are gone when you go through a city or a town or whatever, and you see these big empty buildings that have lights on all night, when the people that are employed in those buildings probably work 8 to 10 hours there. I mean, those days hopefully are gone. But within those buildings, the energy efficiency management in terms of how those buildings are actually created in the first place, there's been absolutely massive improvements into how those buildings are actually designed, put together, and operated. And that's where I come back to, building out the developing countries' ecosystem If the developing countries build out their ecosystem the same way as the Western world, then we have no chance of sustainability. That's just a fact. So they have to face up to the challenge of building out their ecosystem in a fundamental